Hello, friends. I'm Phoebe. Welcome to my music discovery journey. We are delving into some history today. Sabaton talk about a lot of historical events in their music, and they have a history channel which kind of covers each of those events in a bit more detail with a professional historian, Indy Neidell, who talks with the band members and covers a lot of the information and the stories and goes through sources. And whilst all historical events are told from different perspectives and to take with a pinch of salt and not to always fully believe everything, I think they tend to have quite a good all-round account of things, and Indy's done a lot of research on these things, and whether you want to believe it or not, I always think it's really fascinating and quite good for me to learn more about historic events. When I was much younger, I hated history at school, and then there was a point where things clicked and I was like, oh, this is all like real life stuff. Duh. And suddenly it became quite interesting that these things had happened, for one, and some of them were awful, but a really important thing to learn about in life. So I'm going to be checking out the D-Day landings video that they've done, and it relates to their track Primo Victoria, which I've been asked to react to at some point soon. And I don't normally do this because this is kind of 20 minutes extra time to look at, but I don't know enough information. I've heard about D-Day and the D-Day landings, of course, but it's been a long time since I've focused on that specific time, an event, World War II, that I need reminding, I need informing, educating, and I'm not afraid to say that I don't know everything. There might be people in the comments, and usually after the history videos, that say, God, you don't know about this. And no, I'm very knowledgeable about a lot of things, but no, I don't know all about history, but I'm keen to learn, and I think that's always a good thing. And if you mock me for that, I actually don't care. I kind of find it a bit weird that people put others down when they're keen to learn. Anyway, let's watch this. It's their episode 75.
At least among the Western Allies, it is the most often told story of the Second World War.
And it's also the beginning of the Sabaton sound. Primo Victoria.
Oh, is this one of their first tracks or something? The beginning of the Sabaton sound.
To the gates of hell, as we make our way to heaven through the Nazi lines. Primo Victoria.
Joachim's vocals are always so familiar and distinctive.
June 6, 1944, a few minutes after midnight, a couple of British gliders silently touched down in Normandy near the Caen Canal.
Silently?
Moments later, all hell breaks loose. Shouting, the British commandos race towards the bridge, overwhelming the confused defenders with hand grenades and submachine guns. In minutes, Benouville Bridge, codenamed Pegasus, has been taken. The first phase of Operation Neptune has begun. Neptune, as part of Operation Overlord, was designed to storm the German defenses on the French coast and establish a beachhead to strike further into Normandy. A massive amphibious landing was to be undertaken to open a new front in the war against Nazi Germany and its allies. At 5 different places, the Allied forces would land: Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, and Sword. Thing is, the actual landing at the shore was only to take place after a lot of other chess pieces had been moved. It was vital to the success of the operation that paratroopers and commandos would go in first, soften up the German defenses in the rear, and disrupt their communications. Brigadier...
I'm not a child. I'm not a child. I'm not gonna joke about that. I guess like any war tactics, they make a plan. That's what they're talking about now, and they have a plan of attack and hope that will be successful.
Soften up the German defenses in the rear and disrupt their communications. Brigadier James Hill had told his men before, "Gentlemen, in spite of your excellent training and orders, do not be daunted if chaos reigns. It undoubtedly will." Far on the western side, the 1st American paratroops of the 82nd and 101st landed. They were to protect the gap between Utah and Omaha beaches, and, like the British further east, would destroy as many of the German coastal batteries and anti-aircraft guns as possible. The Germans were aware that an invasion was coming. The concentration of force around the British Isles was obvious, but they did not know the exact date nor the location. Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, in charge of the German defenses at the Atlantic Wall, had made repeated visits to Normandy. Now, if the invasion was to begin here, the Allies would find not one, but several obvious landing zones. So Rommel worked and worked the construction companies to improve the local defenses. He ordered the flooding of fields, the tightening of minefields, and the creation of anti-airborne poles. But whatever he did, it seemed like nothing could ever be enough. The length of the Atlantic Wall was just too large, and the Germans lacked both the resources and the manpower to create a solid wall of fortresses. Now, on the night of June 6, the German soldiers awoke to flak fire and explosions. Local commanders hung on the telephones trying to get any sort of orders or information about what the hell was going on. Was this the invasion? Was it a raid? Was it just another bombing run? Fate had it.
I mean, communication is key. Back in those days, communication wasn't as easy as it is now to, get instant messages across to people. But there were ways of communicating, of course, but obviously it's a lot more streamlined and easier now. Much different these days.
Raid? Was it just another bombing run? Fate had it that Rommel was far away in Germany just then. And at the same time, most of the Wehrmacht High Command was either in Paris or basically anywhere except where the fighting was actually happening. Many lower-ranking commanders lost their heads, sending their local reserves in the hopes of stopping the invasion as it began. And at first, German resistance was decidedly lackluster. Many sites were guarded by men from Eastern Europe, often Poles, Czechs, or from the Soviet Union, who were pressed into service with the Wehrmacht. They had neither the training nor the will to stand up to the aggressive attackers. This allowed the first waves of paratroopers, the Pathfinders, to place radio beacons and Hall of Fame lights to mark the landing zones for the real attack. Soon, over 13,000 Allied paratroopers dropped from their transport planes. In small groups they fought, ambushing the Germans and attacking their barracks and patrols throughout the night. It was absolute chaos. Firefights were reported seemingly everywhere, and German officers had a hard time getting any assessment of the situation. In other words, the paratroopers were doing their job. The second phase could begin.
This is going to be good.
At H hour, a huge swarm of American and British bombers made its way to Normandy. Since April, they had intensified their efforts to pound the German positions into non-existence. But Allied High Command was not taking any chances. Once more, they would try to level anything the Germans had put in front of the landing zones, preferably the anti-aircraft casemates and high-caliber naval guns. RAF Bomber Command dispatched Halifax and Lancaster heavy bombers. The U.S. Air Force sent out Flying Fortresses and Liberators at the forefront.
Are they the names of the aircraft, I'm guessing? I think I've ever heard those terms, but it's something I'm not as familiar with.
Bombers. The U.S. Air Force sent out Flying Fortresses and Liberators at the forefront. Mosquito bombers, Thunderbolts, Marauders, rocket-firing Typhoons. Pretty much anything that had a cool name was to be thrown against the German Atlantic Wall. All in all, over 11,500 Allied aircraft would attack and wreck the German positions on the French coast this morning.
Wow.
The Luftwaffe might as well have not existed at this point, because there was no way of even making a dent into that kind of force.
Bits of June.
Then the final third phase began.
Just to mention that the anniversary of this is approaching, and that's why someone's asked to to react to this one on the. I think we're recording it on the 5th. I'm recording this on the 4th at the moment, trying to fit it in.
Then the final third phase began, as the guns of the navies opened up. Whatever the bombers had missed now took direct fire from 900 warships of the Royal Navy and 200 warships from the U.S. Atlantic Fleet. Under cover of their shelling, the landing crafts made their way slowly through the strong waves. Over 4,000 boats had been brought along to carry troops, tanks, and war material into the designated landing zones. Even duplex-drive Sherman tanks and waterproof Churchill tanks were to be landed. At around 6 a.m., the first thousands of American, British, and Canadian troops were about to close in on the beaches. The coast in front of them was burning and clad in smoke and morning mist. The Pathfinders had enjoyed the element of surprise, but this element was quickly fading. The Germans were now on full alert and began arming and organizing themselves. They set up defense perimeters at the beaches, manning the guns in the bunkers and resistance nets. Nearly all of their large artillery guns had been destroyed in the bombardment, as it turned out. Machine gun nests, the smaller bunkers, the control centers for the Goliaths, everything had gone up in flames. What the Germans were left with were little groups of men with small arms and mortars. Now, Hollywood and video games often portray the defenders as a large army of elite Nazi veterans, but in reality, this was the Wehrmacht of 1944. Much of the Normandy defenses were orchestrated by experienced NCOs, sure, but the men under their control were mostly teenagers or men over 40. Many of them could not have served in the army before because of health issues, but the German army had been scraping the bottom of the barrel. However, even a frightened recruit can pull the trigger of an MG-42 machine gun, and the Germans still possessed quite a number of those. With the advantage of the defender, they prepared to rain down 1,400 rounds a minute over the beaches. Utah Beach was, like most other landing zones, a long strip of sand, but intercrossed by dunes that provided a modest amount of cover. As the landing crafts opened their ramps, the men burst out. Immediately, machine gun and small arms fire smashed into their ranks. Despite the heavy damage they'd taken, many of the German casemates were still standing, and the German soldiers fired from their gun slits into the oncoming landing craft. Luckily for the Americans, the Sherman tanks had arrived as well, providing cover as combat engineers raced across the dunes, trying to blast their way through the barbed wire. To the east at Omaha, the Americans were not quite as lucky. There was no trace of the supporting tanks. In fact, 30 of 32 had sunk into the sea. And while most of the German defenses at Utah had been obliterated, quite a number of their resistance nests here were still functional. Mortar shells tore into the landing craft, killing a third of the first company outright. Then at 6:31, the first assault ramps went down.
We've been here before. Is this kind of war? Crossfire right through the sand.
Sounds like this is gonna be good.
As the Americans struggled to get out, the German machine guns tore into the packed groups of men, killing dozens in mere seconds. Bodies piled up in the landing crafts, and many panicked, jumping into the water, only to be dragged down by their kit. Still, the soldiers pressed on, out of the boats and onto the beach. The first waves were completely exposed to the German machine guns as the men ran over the sands. For the only option was to make a mad dash towards the end of the beach, despite their instincts telling them to lay down behind the smallest amount of cover. The NCOs spurred their men on as mortar shells screeched past them. All around them, men were shot or blown apart, but more and more American soldiers were arriving. There were simply too many for the overheating MG-42s to take on. Eventually, small groups of men made it to the beach wall, firing back at the Germans, while the engineers blew holes into the barbed wire with Bangalore torpedoes. The British forces at Gold and the Canadians landing at Juneau fared better, as tanks and infantry arrived pretty much simultaneously.
Is Gold and Juneau, are they both still place names? I've never heard of it. I heard of Juneau, but I didn't know it was a place. I just know it's a movie title, which has nothing to do with this. But That's something I need to learn about. I've heard of Utah, of course.
Fared better, as tanks and infantry arrived pretty much simultaneously. Facing only light opposition, they quickly pushed onward and beyond the beaches, under the cover of the Churchill tanks, which were armed with bunker-busting mortars or flamethrowers. They systematically cleared enemy strongpoints. Mines and machine guns were still deadly, but not in enough numbers to stop them. At Sword Beach, however, where the British infantry ran into a similar hail of fire from machine guns and mortars as at Omaha, 200 men had been killed or wounded in mere minutes, and the men were pinned down on the beach. Single 88mm guns blew the landing craft apart, and bleeding and burning men littered the beach. Several Churchill tanks were even knocked out. But even in all that chaos, the Allies made progress. They literally blew their way through and out of the German defenses. Explosive charges and tanks hammered the bunkers and casemates, and once one German strongpoint was overcome, the others were open for attack. So, like a house of cards, the German defenses fell apart. The men overran the German resistance nests, often not stopping to take any prisoners. They cracked the bunkers with high explosives, then cleared them with grenades and flamethrowers. The surviving Germans were in full retreat. By around 9 a.m., D-Day was looking pretty good for the Allies. So far, the Atlantic Wall seemed to be fully penetrated. The German beach defenses had been overrun and the major strongpoints overcome. From all sections, the troops were pushing onward, trying to keep the Germans from forming new defensive lines. But, although the Wehrmacht had been pushed back, it was not beaten. In fact, new battle groups were formed, and the Panzer divisions and highly mobile Waffen-SS were making their way north. The gates to hell had been pushed open, and if the Allies wanted to free France from the Nazi stranglehold, they would have to make their way straight through the German lines.
Through the gates of hell, as we make our way to heaven, through the Nazi lines. Primo, Victoria.
Okay, those are big words, Joachim. The beginning of the Sabaton sound.
Yes.
Well, what do you mean?
I'm interested in
Well,
this
in a way, it is
as well.
not only that album, but that was the first song where we started incorporating, well, arranging the instruments that way, harmonizing the vocals the way we do, which is sort of like you would do in, I guess, Lutheran church hymns.
But whose idea was this? Was this your idea or a producer's idea or a little bit of both?
In this case, I am to blame. Actually, I remember we recorded the songs. This was, doing a demo back in 2003, I think, something like that. And I remember the look on everybody's face when I said this song would only have vocals as an intro, and they're like, "What?"
Oh no!
I did think that at the start. I was wondering if they had just separated the vocal from the audio, the rest of the audio, the instruments. It's all audio. So that's interesting. That's an interesting detail.
That this song would only have vocals as an intro, and they're like, "What?"
Oh no!
Go, through the gates of hell, we only do have that. And they're like, "Yeah, and then you have delay and reverb." Like, no, nothing. No. It's like that. That's how the song starts.
Did you say like a Lutheran choir in 1527? And did you say it with this accent too, just like that? Just to really complete the picture. So.
No, I was thinking. I remember clearly when we were in the studio, we recorded the song, and we had done the lead vocals, but we had no harmony vocals. And we had never done anything like this before. We'd always do we call it fotbollskör in Swedish, football choir.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
You get everybody to sing along.
And everybody does it once.
The same harmony.
A lot of their music I've learned or I've noticed that they have the kind of chanting, and because it feels like a lot of it has a military feel or a marching to war, or people are trying to be triumphant and win a battle. So it would sound, it wouldn't fit if it had like your normal choir that you see at an orchestra. But if you had like people marching and chanting, that fits the theme perfectly. So that's interesting to hear him say it, just to get that reassurance and obviously understand that that's important.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
You get everybody to sing along,
and everybody does it once,
the same harmony more or less in rhythm, in key, whatever.
But if you get like 8 guys, it works.
Yeah, exactly. I remember Per was sitting behind the control desk because we were recording this at night. We were recording with Tommy Tekgren at the time in the Abyss studio. And Per was sitting behind the control desk. Me, Richard, and Oscar, the guitarists at the time, were standing behind the microphone. And I showed them, like, now we're going to sing "To the gates of hell as we make our way to heaven, to the Nazi lines, Primo Victoria." And just like that. And they're like, that's weird. And then "Through the gates of hell as we make our way to heaven, to the Nazi lines, Primo Victoria."
It's the 1/5.
Yeah. And then we did copy my... For the last one, we copied my lead.
Nice to layer that.
Everybody thought this is weird, and heavy metal song, you're gonna destroy this,
Well, maybe not.
Nobody.
Primo Victoria. This is like you guys. This is like your song.
One of our most famous ones, actually. But I was so happy because I remember feeling it myself. I remember seeing Per, because once we sang them all, I told them just to remove all the other harmonies. So we only heard what we just sang. And then I told Per, okay, now just crank all harmonies up.
So they didn't know.
Yeah, they didn't know.
Cool.
And then when the choir first comes after the intro, Primo Victoria, I remember Per sort of like, I don't know if he did like that or he just pushed himself away from the mixing board doing like that.
Yeah.
And I remember myself for the first time, and this is quite an emotional moment for me actually, this is for me an extremely important moment in Sabaton history and in my life, because this is the first time I thought something was so good that we had done.
Okay.
That it was so good, it was, not only good to be what we did. It was not only good enough for... It's good for these guys from Falun.
Oh, yeah.
This was really good. And it was actually as good and better than I would have hoped for.
Oh.
To the gates of hell.
Obviously, the crowd loves it. We'll get a proper feel for it when we react. The reason I do these is I don't want the spoilers so much, but I want to have the background info, and I think it's nicer to have the background info before we delve into the actual song and then the lyrics, because without the context and without the information, or even if it's not refreshed, even if I have an idea of the event, it's harder to talk about, and it's if they have any references, it's much easier to talk about the stuff that is fresh in my memory. So that's why I choose to do the history episode before, for the most part, unless I haven't got any time, because these videos are really long and they require quite a fair bit of time to sit down and go through, even though I'm kind of just, it's more reacting, not an analysis for the history videos. It's learning and educating and talking about that, almost like a watch along, but utilizing the content and changing it a bit rather than just sitting in silence for 20 minutes. It's kind of stealing content if you do that. So,
Primo Victoria, which should be Prima Victoria because it's female, we know now, sorry. But it sort of means the beginning, or the first victory, or the beginning of the victory.
I think I had a feeling that it was Prima because Victoria ends with A as well, and feminine stuff they do with languages.
It means the beginning, or the first victory, or the beginning of the victory. And it's also, in a very real way, the beginning of Sabaton. Because I noticed how much I loved writing in that style. It felt like all of a sudden we had our own musical identity. We were not copying other bands.
Like their own
that
template.
Thing that was new to us then is now, what do you say, a very, very, very big part of the Sabaton sound that we use today. That way of arranging the choirs, that way of arranging the instruments, having the guitars playing the same sometimes, swapping into octaves, doing different things. A lot of it, the use of synthesizers even.
Victoria, on the 6th of June, when the shows of Western Europe, Primo Victoria.
And then now you guys are going to switch to a different kind of history on your next album, right?
Yes, pornographic history.
I mean, but you're not going to do any research on any porno sites because that would involve watching pornography. And
Yeah, that would be wrong. No.
That we don't.
We'll just make shit up as we go along.
See, that's great. See, that's what Okay, ladies and gentlemen, here's a new slogan for the Sabaton History Channel. Sabaton History, making shit up as we go along. See you next time.
Anyway, they're going to try and be funny, you know. Nice. Very good.
All right, everyone, you know the drill. You click, 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 click. Get some subscriptions, check out Indy's other channels, become
Links
a patron.
below.
That's it, get the fuck out of here.
Links below. Oh, sorry. All the links below. I am subscribed already to the Sabaton History channel, and I think it's really, really useful, particularly when you're looking at like facts and information and different sources for historic events. It's very important to have a clear picture of what might have happened, or was quite accurate to what might have happened. Obviously, if you're not there, you don't know for sure exactly what happened. But we have people's accounts, we have books, we have media, there's propaganda even that we can look at and gain an understanding of what the accounts were as a whole. So I find that incredibly cool, and I wish I'd seen the importance of history when I was much younger, but it was about, I think, at the age of 12 that I turned a corner and was like, oh, this is actually quite important, actually. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you to any patrons supporting the channel. Thank you to anyone giving your time. Your time is the most precious gift you can give to me. So thank you so much. You've already gone above and beyond. And I will see you for another one soon. I will see you for the video of Primo Victoria very soon as well. I will probably post that next in terms of what I'm posting, just because they should go together essentially. So keep your eyes peeled for that, and I will see you soon. Take care. See you soon. Bye bye.